This is Jack from tofluency.com, and welcome to you here on YouTube, where in this lesson we're going to learn a little bit of history as well, because we're going to talk about the 4th of July, Independence Day in the United States. And this is probably, I think it's the biggest holiday in the US, or the most important day in terms of its history and how people celebrate. But we're not just going to talk about history, because we're also going to look at some of the key phrases from the Declaration of Independence. And you might have heard this phrase or the line from the Declaration of Independence. And we're also going to talk about some of the customs and the culture and how people celebrate this holiday. And like I said, we'll look at some history too. And you're going to learn about a very special tea party. A tea party, not with tea and biscuits, where people have lovely tea and they sit down, they relax and they talk at 5 o'clock. It's a different type of tea party today. Now, like always, I'll leave the key phrases in the description so that you can learn from them. And listen to the end, because I'll have some tips on how you can learn these phrases. Okay. So, 4th of July, this is a national holiday of the United States, and it's known as the national holiday, which means the main one, the national holiday. And it's to commemorate, which means to remember and celebrate, the Declaration of Independence of the United States from the British monarchy. And that was King George III at the time. And this was written on the 4th of July, 1776. So a long time ago now. We're just going to talk about what led up to, what preceded the Declaration of Independence, because there were at the time 13 colonies of the United States under the rule of King George III, the British monarchy. Now, can you name the 13 colonies? That's a little test. I'll leave them in the description for you. And leading up to the Revolutionary War, Great Britain and France had fought a war in various territories, including North America. And Great Britain, the British monarchy, had won this war, but it was very costly. So it had been very costly to win this war and to fight the war. So what the monarchy did was they introduced some taxes in the colonies to help pay back debts. It's a great phrasal verb, to pay back debts. The first act was the Stamp Act in 1765, where certain things in the colonies were taxed. And then there was another act in 1767. Now, this led to unrest, which is a great word, unrest. Think about protests, sometimes violent, sometimes not, but people weren't happy about this. So it resulted in unrest, especially in Boston. And the British sent troops or soldiers to help calm down the situation. But when they sent these troops to Boston, it only made things worse. Okay, it only made things worse because people didn't like to have British soldiers on the streets. And this led to what's known as the Boston Massacre. And again, I'll leave a link to this in the description so you can read more about it. And then a key event that happened after that was something called the Boston Tea Party in 1773. This was a really big event in the whole Revolutionary War. And again, this wasn't a fun tea party. This wasn't people just having a relaxing time drinking tea. Instead, there was a group called the Sons of Liberty, and they protested a new tea tax where the colonies were taxed on tea by going to Boston Harbor in the middle of the night, going aboard three ships in Boston Harbor and dumping tea into the harbor. So they took the tea from the ships and they threw it overboard. They dumped it into the harbour. Now, tensions kept growing, and in 1775, the British planned to capture 2 colonial leaders, 2 people who were more radical and calling for a big change. However, American spies got wind of this. They got wind of it, which means that they learned about it. So they found out that they were going to capture these 2 colonial leaders. And then 77 militiamen, think soldiers, met British forces. And it was basically here that the American Revolutionary War began. Now, in the background to all of this, there were a lot of people talking about, okay, what's going to happen after the war? What do we want from it? And not everyone wanted independence at this time. But in a meeting, they decided to vote for this. And Thomas Jefferson was a principal author of the Declaration of Independence. And this is the document where the US said, okay, we want to be free. We want to have our own independent country. So that is the background to writing the Declaration of Independence. Now we're going to talk about the most famous part of this declaration, and it's the second sentence. Here it is. You might have heard this before, but listen closely. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Feel free to just go back and listen to that sentence again. But what we're going to do now is have a look at some of the language used here. So, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Now, self-evident means obvious and something that doesn't need to be explained. The next part, that all men are created equal. This was heavily influenced by the French philosophers such as Voltaire, and also Thomas Paine, who I think was from Norfolk in England, had a big influence here too. Again, I'll leave a link to Thomas Paine's Common Sense, which was such an important document or mini book, I guess, that had a big effect on the whole American Revolution. The next one, endowed by their Creator, which basically means given by God or whoever created men. Unalienable rights. This means they are unable to be taken away. So you can't take these rights away. And then the line I think a lot of people know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The idea that you can go and create your own happiness and that you have the right to life and also liberty for freedom. Now, you probably know that, and I won't spoil it here for you if you're interested, that America won the war. The United States won the war with the help from France and Spain and became an independent nation. Now, before we talk about the celebrations and talk about the culture of this, here's a line from Wikipedia. By a remarkable coincidence, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, the only 2 people who signed the Declaration of Independence and later to serve as presidents of the United States, both died on the same day, July 4th, 1826, which was the 50th anniversary of the Declaration. So that's just an interesting coincidence there. So let's talk about how to celebrate this holiday and just some of the key features of it. Now, there are two big holidays in the US where they're very specific to the United States. So Thanksgiving is one, and July the 4th, Independence Day, is the other. Now, you can contrast these two because think about Thanksgiving as a formal family get-together with a sit-down meal, which usually means turkey, potatoes and vegetables, rice. And my wife and I actually, Kate, who is on this channel a lot, made a podcast on this, and I'll leave a link to that. It's one of the first podcast episodes we did a long time ago. So you can listen to what it's like to celebrate Thanksgiving. So that's more formal. But the 4th of July is more informal. So think about friends getting together to have parties outside and to have barbecues. So this is where people tend to make hot dogs and burgers and put them on the grill or on the barbecue. They're all outside together. There's music, there's fun, and it's family friendly, but more about going to celebrate with friends if you don't have family in town. So for Thanksgiving, a lot of people will travel across country, across the United States, to spend that time with their family. But on the 4th of July, people tend to stay where they are, and it's not that big family holiday that you have to go to. Instead, it's about friends, outside parties. It's in the summer, so it's hot, and people just get outside and have a good time. For the children, usually there are some types of water activities, things like a water slide, those small swimming pools, water guns, water balloons as well. So the children usually have some kind of water fight going on. When it comes to food, think about hot dogs and burgers, but also apple pies, which is like the national dessert of the United States. Corn on the cob. People like to drink beer here as well. And when it comes to clothing, people tend to dress in red, white, and blue. And there are American flags everywhere. So actually, if you know teacher Vanessa from Speak English with Vanessa, she bought me some very striking, very obvious American shorts where there are stars and they're blue and white. And I'm going to wear them for this celebration on the 4th of July. And the final thing that's a big part of this holiday is fireworks. So most towns will have some type of fireworks celebration, usually downtown, and people will take deck chairs or their foldable chairs to go find a space downtown so that they can watch fireworks. And some common places are to go on top of parking lots, so the top level of a parking lot, or to go to a park which overlooks the city. It really just depends on the city and what kind of view you can get, depending on what the city is like. But fireworks are a big part of this too. And a lot of children will stay up late with their family in order to watch the fireworks. And in addition to having fireworks downtown, a lot of people will have their own fireworks in their yard too, if it's allowed in those areas. So we have learned about the history that led to the Declaration of Independence. We've learned some vocabulary from the Declaration of Independence, and also talked about how to celebrate, or how people celebrate this holiday in the US, and how it's more informal, especially when you compare it to Thanksgiving. Now, what I recommend you do is go to the description and learn the phrases that I've left there, because those are the types of phrases that I've used in this lesson. And I'll leave a couple more examples as well to help you understand that vocabulary. But then also, if you're interested in this topic, I recommend also watching some YouTube videos on the topic where they talk about the history. You can get very specific with this if you want, where you can learn everything about the Boston Tea Party in 1773. Or you can just have that another podcast episode or YouTube video that goes through the history of this, or that goes through the signing of the Declaration, or that looks at the different celebrations in the US. And to make this easier for you, I will leave some links for you in the description so that you can just click those and have a look. Now, again, if you're new here, then subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube. And also just have a look at some of my other lessons, which you can easily find by just going to my profile. And also, if you've really enjoyed it, then feel free to leave a review if you're on a podcast app, or share it if you're on YouTube. And one last thing, if you like this type of lesson, let me know in the comments and let me know what type of lesson you would like me to make next. Okay, thank you so much for being here, and I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.